people have... thanks, Mark. So this is the recording just started. So this is our CPD event. It's the 18th of March, 2024. Welcome along. And we're going to be doing a sort of conversion training for anybody who's done a Breathworks TTI event, who wants to get our Mindfulness Facilitator certification. So that's what we'll be doing today. More on that anon, but let's start with the practice now. Okay, so thought I would just guide us for about 10 minutes or so, just in a breathing practice. And I'm going to start with a little poem by John Welwood, which is one that I really love. It's called Forget About Enlightenment. Forget about enlightenment. Sit down wherever you are and listen to the wind singing in your veins. Feel the love, the longing, the fear in your bones. Open your heart to who you are right now. Not who you would like to be, not the saint you're striving to become, but the being right here before you, inside you, around you. All of you is holy. You are already more and less than whatever you can know. Breathe out. Touch in. Let go. So let's begin with the body. This body that is always present here in this very moment. Noticing how the body is arranged in the space. Just checking in with our limbs. Are they comfortable? Do they need to be made more comfortable? Adjusted a little? How are we doing on the chair or whatever we're sitting or leaning on? Can we feel where the body is supported? Can we allow gravity to gently draw the weight of the body downwards? Allowing the body to rest here. Just reminding ourselves that there's nowhere else we need to be now. There's nothing that we need to be doing. Just giving ourselves permission to simply be here. And just noticing the kind of inner weather, emotions, thoughts. Just acknowledging whatever's here with a kind of tender bow. Just allowing it to be however it is, whether that's comfortable or uncomfortable. Just noticing that it's possible for all these different layers of our experience, the body, the emotions, the mind, it's possible for them to just be however they are. I'm going to invite us in a minute to bring our awareness closer in on the breath. But if that's not helpful for you just now, then please just choose a different anchor for your attention. It could be sounds around you, the feeling in your feet or your hands, even opening your eyes and gently gazing. Just noticing that this body is breathing. The breath is flowing. Just doing it without you having to change anything. Just noticing what it's like to allow the breath. Like if we stand by the side of a stream, we don't have to do anything. The stream just flows along. So allowing the breath to simply flow naturally. And can you notice how the body moves to welcome the breath and release it again? The body is really part of this flow, this ebb and flow. You might notice that movement at the surface of the body, around the chest, the upper back, the belly, even the lower back, perhaps just slight shifts of pressure there. You might bring a sense of tender curiosity to the experience further within the body. Perhaps you notice the movement around the midriff, where the diaphragm is contracting and releasing with each breath. Maybe you feel the movement deeper within the belly. Perhaps even a little echo of movement down into the pelvis. But this body of ours, even while we are still at one level, sitting or lying here still, the body is in constant ebb and flow, moving with the breath. And if the mind or the attention gets drawn elsewhere to thoughts or other distractions, just noticing that attention is designed to be interested in things. And we can just gently invite it back to get interested in the breath. And the breath didn't stop while attention wandered briefly. Here it is, faithfully flowing. And then let's just begin to broaden our awareness out to the whole of the body. This breathing body in this space, in this fresh moment. Even as we begin to conclude our practice, this is a new moment. And we'll be really present to the light in the room, perhaps coming through closed eyelids. Being present to sounds. The feeling of clothing on our skin. The gentle pressure of the chair and floor beneath us, touching those contact points with the body. So noticing that as we begin to end this practice, we're always beginning again, that there's still nowhere to go. Just being here now. So if the body would like to move a little, please do have a stretch, a yawn, a wriggle. If you've still got eyes closed, you might like to open them when you're ready. Thank you. A lovely way to begin our time together for the practice. I'm just going to have another flick through the couple of screens because it's good to see. Yeah, there's one or two people who've arrived while we were doing that practice. Welcome. And welcome to anyone who's catching up on the recording. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just do a quick reminder to anyone who arrived late or hasn't worked out how to do it. If you can rename yourself so that there's a number at the beginning of your name, which is the little mini module that you're interested in having a go at facilitating, that'd be perfect. Most people I think have done that now, which is brilliant. If you haven't and you can manage it, great. If not, Mark will just do a random assignation anyway, so don't worry. Okay, so I've got some slides which I'm just going to take us through briefly as a sort of introduction to the day, what we're here for. We're going to have a stretch break at just a short 5-minute one at 10:25 UK time. Okay, so just a reminder really of what we're here for. So this CPD is basically an opportunity for anyone who's already completed stage 1 of the Breathworks teacher training, TTI, might be the way you knew it, or indeed anyone who's completed the whole training. You're very welcome. I know there's 1 or 2 of you here, to convert that training and become certified as a Breathworks mindfulness facilitator. So as you'll be aware, hopefully, from this January just gone, January 2024, we kind of updated the whole of the Breathworks training program, and we replaced what was TTI with a number of modules. And there's 2 modules which people can take now, which are mindfulness facilitator training. And it's for people who want to lead short mindfulness sessions rather than teaching the full Breathworks 8-week courses. And Vidyamala and I sort of cooked up 6 little mini modules, we've called them, based on the Breathworks approach for our facilitators to share with others. And that might be sharing in a workplace setting, a community setting, with friends and family, you name it, really. And yeah, we'd had so many requests from existing Breathworks trainees or teachers that they also wanted to get on the bandwagon with this facilitator thing, that you know, this CPD is one of our ways of meeting that request. We're sort of delighted to have the interest from people. Okay, so I'm going to just share my screen and my PowerPoint. Okay. So today's schedule, just to quickly run through it, I'll kind of keep reminding us as we go along. So what we're going to do now is a little overview and introduction to the Mindfulness Facilitator role and the resources, crucially. We'll have a quick 5-minute stretch. Then we're going to go into breakout rooms for much of the rest of the morning session. So we'll have an hour in small groups practicing facilitating stuff. Then we'll have a 15-minute break. Then we'll have another hour in the same groups. Then we'll have lunch, and that'll be an hour for lunch. So we'll get plenty of time away from the screen. After lunch, or whatever it is for you where you are, we'll have an hour together where we'll really have space to reflect and ask questions and talk about what did we learn, what questions or challenges came up, any themes that came out during the sessions in smaller groups. Another 15-minute break, and then we'll have half an hour talking about the boundaries of the role, what's different between being a facilitator and a teacher, that kind of stuff, how to engage in good practice as a facilitator, and then some time for sort of Q&A and anything else that we haven't covered by that point. Okay. And we'll be recording all of it except the bit in small groups. Those will not be recorded. Okay. And my hope is that we can make this a kind of quite open, gentle day for all of us. A day online is always quite demanding, which is why I've put plenty of breaks in. And the bits of time in those smaller groups, I really, really want those to be just gentle, exploratory sessions. Okay, nobody is here to sort of assess whether you're doing it right or anything like that. It's really, my hope is that you've chosen one of those little modules to get to know a wee bit better at this point, and you're just going to experiment with what would it be like to try doing those little chunks of content in it. Does it actually work in the sort of time frame you thought it might, that kind of thing. And in those smaller groups, what we will do is, you've got an hour, and I'm going to suggest that I mean, let's say there's A, B, C, and D are the people in a group. We're going to have groups of 4. So in the first hour, A and B will get to have a little practice of their mini module. Then we'll have a break, and after the break, when you come back, C and D will have their turn to have a little practice. And as you will have seen, each of those mini modules takes 15 minutes minimum, up to about half an hour maximum, I would say, to facilitate. So what I'm going to suggest is that in those little groups, you take no more than 25 minutes each. So there's just a little bit of wiggle room. And if you can't do the whole of whichever mini module you've chosen in 25 minutes, doesn't matter. Just do whatever you can and then stop, so that there is actually still time for reflection and a little bit of chat in your small group. And obviously the other person who's in that hour slot to have their 25 minutes. Okay, so that's basically how the schedule will work. And as I said, I'll keep reminding us about it as we go. Okay, so we're doing fine so far. And I want to just take you now through a little bit about the resources in particular, which hopefully you will have had a bit of a look at, but it'd be good to just take you through. Okay, so 6 mini modules. I've just got a quick summary of what's in them here. You've hopefully may already have had a look. Each of them has a theme. The first one, the body. And in that, you've got a partial body scan, a scan of a body part, a little bit of input about primary and secondary experience, and a mindfulness in action of making peace with gravity. The second one, the theme is the breath. You've got a 3-step breathing space, a little bit about the thought train, and the mindfulness in action there is watching the sky for a while, or bringing to mind a special place or a memory of nature if you're not in a setting where people can see the sky. And you should have noticed, hopefully, that in your resource pack, there's actually just a simple list of these modules. So you should be able to see that just on a single sheet of A4 as a recap. So number 3, movement. So we've got the Tai Chi style movements from the stress course that we introduced there. We talk about doing and being modes. And the mindfulness in action is balanced effort. So it's the one where you can move your bag or chair or open or close a door, that kind of thing. The 4th one is about balance and self-care. So kindness to self is the practice in there. There's the option of kindness to a friend as well, but more often than not, I suspect one might not have time. There's a little bit of input about the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, soothing and self-regulation, the real basics of that stuff. And then the mindfulness in action is a self-soothing activity. So something like jiggling, a self-hug, a face wash. Number 5, calming and grounding. So we brought in some of the alternative anchors, some of the grounding practices that you might have come across in our sort of trauma-sensitive tips is one of the places we've visited those before. The breathing into tension practice, which is actually one of the breathing inquiries from week 1 of the health course. A little bit of input about hard and soft edges or about blocking and overwhelm. And then an invitation to do a grounding practice. Number 6, living more fully. So this one, we bring in some of the content from week 5 of our 8-week courses. So we do a little seeking out the pleasant meditation, we talk a bit about the negativity bias, and then we invite folk to share a small sensory pleasure, a memory or a smile from their week, and obviously notice how that makes them feel. So that's the content very briefly. And one of the things that I'm sure you will have noticed is that we've introduced stuff about calming and grounding and so on, but we've very deliberately not taken people into the turning towards a difficult experience, compassionate acceptance kind of territory, because the idea with these mini modules is that they can be completely freestanding. So somebody might come along to one of these sessions who's never done any mindfulness before. So this could be their first experience. So we've really looked at keeping each of these self-contained as a little unit, safe as an entry point for somebody. And the reason we've called them mini modules is the idea that a bit like jigsaw pieces, you can put them together. So if you want a slightly longer session, you could put 2 of them together. Or if you want a series of sessions, you could put them in a little. I mean, the order that we've created them works quite nicely, but you might want to play with it. Okay. So I'm just going to show you briefly, and again, hopefully you've had a look at the information we sent out, but just a quick overview of the shape of one of these mini modules. Okay, so the resources that we've provided, we've again tried to keep it very simple for people. So to facilitate one of these, you'll just need the stuff we've provided, which is a short session plan and brief facilitator notes. And then we've created a little PowerPoint slideshow for each mini module. That's completely optional. You don't have to use it at all, but we just wanted there to be something to support you and give a visual if you found that helpful. And then the format, as we've just seen, really, each one follows exactly the same format. So there's a theme which links to the Breathworks 6-step process. And in each of these mini modules, you will find that there's a very brief introduction to mindfulness. That's the same in each one. So that if it's the first module you've ever done with this group, you've got a sort of 2 or 3 minute little introduction to mindfulness. And then there's a short mindfulness practice, a key idea, and it's usually just one aspect of one of the key concepts that we deliver in the 8-week courses. And then a mindfulness in action practice. Again, most of those will look familiar to you, I'm sure. We've sort of just mostly taken things from the courses. Okay, so this is just an example from, this is the first mini module with the theme is the body. So you'll see that in each one, there are some learning objectives. And again, those are quite helpful because they give you a sense of what it is you're actually hoping people will gain from this very short session. And I hope that it will help you kind of stay really focused, because I think the main danger with these short sessions is that we try and bring in too much and overload ourselves and our participants. So stick to the objectives, and that will help, I hope. So with this one, it's people to learn about mindfulness and experience a simple mindfulness practice, to increase their awareness of direct sensory experience, especially through the body, to understand the difference between primary and secondary experience, and to begin to understand and experience how this awareness can reduce stress and change how they relate to pain. So even in a very short session, that might begin to show up. But that's very much a sort of secondary objective there. Okay, you'll see a little timetable like this in the facilitator notes for each mini module. And excuse me, firstly, there's an introduction, the very brief sort of, housekeeping stuff, introducing the theme, reminding people about self-care, and just touching in on what mindfulness is. It's going to be a very brief introduction, but just so that they have a sense of what's the underpinning of this. And then you've got 5 to 10 minutes for each of the other bits. Now, of course, you could take one of these mini modules and make it last an hour easily, if you sort of get expansive about it and you allow time for chat and so on. And that's absolutely fine. Go ahead. But we wanted it to be something that could stand as a very brief intervention, because when we originally designed these facilitator sessions, we had in mind a couple of groups of health professionals who'd approached us saying, we need something brief that we can do with clients or patients or colleagues. So that was where they began. So in this one, the practice is to scan part of the body. So taking exactly the approach that you'll be familiar with from the body scan and guiding people in just focusing on one part of their body. And it might be that you guide them through, you choose and you say, okay, let's go with hands, or let's go with shoulders, or whatever. Or it might be that you give people a little bit of a choice and you gauge your guidance in a way that allows for that option. I have to say that I've been really delighted in the feedback about this. People are surprised at what they gain from doing a 5-minute scan of just their feet or just their hands or shoulders. It's been one of those moments for me that's really kind of brought home yet again that even just a little drop of mindfulness can be so transformative. So yeah, I commend that one to you. I'll be interested to see how you find it. Then the idea that we share here is about primary and secondary experience. Obviously introducing it, explaining how mindfulness can help us reduce the secondary, change how we relate to primary. So again, you'll be familiar with that from weeks 1 of the stress and health courses. And we're keeping it really, really focused here. It's just dropping this idea in, and you'll see in the facilitator notes, what it suggests that you do with that, but keeping it quite simple. We don't have pretty much any enactments in these mini sessions. That doesn't mean you can't bring them in. If there's an enactment that you feel like that would be brilliant and it's really appropriate and it goes with this one, if you've got time to do it and you plan accordingly, great. But we haven't included them generally in order to keep these light touch, short and accessible for somebody who's not done the full teacher training as well to lead. And then there's a mindfulness in action in each of these little sessions. This one's making peace with gravity. As you know, I'm sure from your own experience, it's a lovely one for really helping people get in touch with the body and really release a little of the tension that they might habitually hold. So yeah, at that point, you explain what the mindfulness in action practice is, and if possible, invite people to do it in the session for a moment or two, because that's one of the great strengths, I think, of these ones, is that it's something we're going to do in the session, unlike in the 8-week courses where it's a kind of go home and do this. So yeah, do a little taste of it in the session, and then obviously invite people to take it home to do in the week as well. Okay. Now, you're not going to be able to read these on the screen, don't worry. This is just a little screenshot. That's what they look like. You've got that session plan and then some sections talking you through the other bits. Basically, there are brief facilitator notes for each element. They do contain all the information that you should need to deliver the session. Emphasize that, because particularly for any of you who have gone on and done more of the teacher training, but for any of us, we may be tempted to do too much. And that's where you'll find you get into trouble with time. And also people who are newer to these concepts may struggle with some of the sort of additional layers that we would bring in a full 8-week course. Okay. So in order to facilitate one of these mini modules effectively, I've mentioned that there are these prepared slides that we've created. You can use those if you want. Now, I've said as well, from TTI, or indeed if you've gone further on into the training, you'll have a deeper understanding of what you're sharing with people. And you'll have some additional resources perhaps from that training. So I'm just emphasizing this again, don't try and incorporate all that extra information in when you facilitate the session, because it's, you're likely to just overload people. And I've mentioned about the timing. Each of the sections can be done in 5 minutes. I've done that myself with each of them, and it does work fine. But it may be that you want to take a wee bit longer, which is absolutely fine. Keep it simple. I think that will help. That's the idea with these, is that they should be simple. Okay, let's stop sharing there. Now, I have also got, I'm just going to briefly share one other bit of slides. So I've got the slides for the first mini module. These are the facilitator slides for you to use in case you haven't had a chance to look at any of them yet. I just wanted to give you a taste of what they like. When creating these, I tried to just keep them really simple. So it says what's in the session, the 3 elements. There's a lovely picture of Vidyamala in each of these slideshows. So you'll get the same slide with her little definition of mindfulness that you can use to riff off if you find that helpful. And even in one of these short sessions, people often find it helpful to have this sense of connecting with breathworks, connecting with Vidyamala and the whole approach. So it's there if that's helpful to you. Then there's a sort of holding slide really for the guided practice. And then if there's any slides that are helpful for the key concept or the idea for that session, there's a slide. So here we've got one with the picture of the sort of the snowballing effect of secondary experience here, just as a brief reference point visually. There's a sort of example of some catastrophizing thoughts that somebody might engage with, again, if that's helpful for you to use. And then there's another holding slide for the mindfulness in action practice. And a kind of thank you Q&A slide at the end. So that's basically it. They're deliberately not text heavy at all. They're really just something that you can use both as sort of prompts for you to keep you moving through a little session, and also just as a kind of something visual for those who like to have a visual, who have a visual learning style. Okay. So that's a quick whip through the resources. I want to just open that up for questions. I think given how many of us there are, might be helpful if you've got a question about the resources, maybe put your hand up, which for most of us, that's under reactions at the bottom in the toolbar, and then there's a raise hand option. Or you can put a question in the chat, that's absolutely fine as well. Okay, Liz, do you want to ask away?
Hi, Ginny. Nice to see you again. My question was on the actual facilitator notes. You have quite a lot written sort of quite specifically about what mindfulness and other bits. So it's quite a lot of writing. And I don't know, how much are you supposed to stick and make sure we have all that in there, or to stick to make sure you've included everything on there? Or can you sort of much more be a bit more free about how you define mindfulness and things like that? So that was my question. In this training, do we have to really stick very carefully, or is it because you can be more flexible and not have to read out certain bits if you like, so you can just do it from your own understanding kind of thing, rather than having to stick to
it? Of course, no, it's a really, really important, very good question. So what we wanted to do was provide enough information there that for somebody who's coming fresh to this, who doesn't have other mindfulness teacher training or who hasn't done TTI or anything, so that they've got enough there to fall back on. I mean, I would hope that nobody who's a breathworks facilitator is just reading stuff out, but that it's there to kind of go, okay, yes, that's my reminder. I'm going to highlight those bits, and as I think we all do when we begin with something. But I would certainly hope that if you're more confident to riff on what is mindfulness from your own experience, You know, you might have your own favorite definition. A lot of people like the John Kabat-Zinn one, etc. You know, you can of course do that. And you can play with those slides. You know, if you want to take those slides as a starting point and change the bits of it, fine, go ahead. We really just wanted to provide a resource as a starting point to support people. And yeah, I think what we tried to do with those facilitator notes was put all the words in there that you might need. And really it's then for you to choose what you do with that. And a lot of you, I know very well, looking around this room, a lot of you have a lot more experience than someone who's just coming into facilitator training fresh, not having really done anything much other than an 8-week course with us. So yes, you will have a better sense. Oh, okay, great. So Heather's saying she didn't receive the resources. Yeah, if anyone else is in that same boat, then of course, please do reach out to Kinga and she'll send them to you. So yeah, it basically ad lib, riff, you know, anyone sharing mindfulness would, whether as a fully trained teacher or a facilitator, that comes naturally, doesn't it, with your own sort of experience and confidence. But we just wanted you to have the clear parameters there in the words that we put in the teacher's notes, really. Anybody else got a question? Please don't be reticent, because it's really helpful to have questions, because it helps everybody get kind of a better sense of things. Okay, brilliant.
I was just noticing there, you know, questions at the end. I'm just wondering, in reality, when you were doing real sessions, Jenny, do people have questions? Like, is that easy to do, to keep everybody quiet until the end, or is it more natural just to let people ask questions at the end of every little session? Or does that take up a lot of time? You know, I think you answered the question there when you said, you know, when it's flowing, you know yourself.
Yeah, I think it's going to really depend on the context that you're in. So there may be some contexts where it feels completely natural and straightforward to allow a bit of conversation and questions in between those different elements of the little session. You might not be on, you know, maybe you're sharing it with family and friends and there's no time scale and you've got as much time as you want, so you can be very relaxed. Or maybe you're in a workplace setting and you know people are going 20 minutes from now, they're leaving to go on their lunch break or whatever. And so you're not going to want to lose track of the time. So I think you're going to be the best judge of that. I would personally probably, in such a short session as this, I'd probably keep the questions till the end myself, because otherwise it might go a little bit off track time-wise. And also one of the things that can happen, I think, in a short session is some people might need to head off afterwards, but you can, you know, just the fact that you said, I'm open for questions. Some people like to stay behind for 5 minutes and chat. So that can be a really helpful extra bit of availability if you've got it, to give to people. Yeah, I hope that helps. Now, somebody else unmuted earlier on with a question. I wonder who that was. Gary, go ahead.
I can't for the life of me spot where I raise a hand virtually. Sorry about that. I was looking particularly at mini module 5 on the grounding and looking at the practice descriptions for the first option, which was using alternative anchors for awareness. And there was a lot of material in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering how we get through all that little lot in the 5 or 10 minute section.
Mm-hmm.
To do that. Is the idea that we just pick out the ones that we think are most important or for that particular group, or do we do a very, very brief outline of that little lot and then a very short practice?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for raising that. Yeah, there are 1 or 2 of the mini modules where we've given a couple of options where we felt like there'll be some groups where you'd want to go this way and some groups where you'd want to go that way. So we wanted you to have a choice. And you're right, even within that, option 1 of the practice for that 5th mini module is still quite long-winded in terms of what we've put in the notes. The idea really was to equip a facilitator with enough information to do that option well. No, you're not going to say all those words. You're not going to give all of that information to your group necessarily, but it gives you the information that you need to do a sort of quick overview of why are we using alternative anchors and how people might adapt, and then give them 2 or 3 options maybe that they could try out. Yeah, I hope that's helpful.
Yes,
Yeah.
smashing. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Now there was a question in the chat, so let me just go there. Okay, so Anne is asking whether the sessions were designed with particular contexts in mind. They seem really suitable for the workplace. We tried to do it in such a way that they would work in a workplace, but that they could also be played with really in other contexts. So yeah, that we were aware that they needed to be something that was really kind of coherent and cohesive, that wasn't going to just go on and on and on, so that it would work in a workplace. But I think that, you know, one of the contexts that people have talked to us about very much wanting this sort of resource for is community settings, you know, where you've got some kind of group who actually people haven't got the time, energy, or health or whatever to do a full 2-hour session of an 8-week course. So actually having short practices, short sessions like this could work really well in a community setting, I think. And, you know, if there's any way in which they feel, you know, if you look at them and think, well, it feels a bit too formal or whatever, make it less formal by your presence, really, and the way that you hold the space. Yeah, okay, good, thank you. Anything else from anybody? Elsa, please go ahead.
Hello, my question is, I would like to share the presentation, the slide presentation, and I've never done that. How do I go about doing that?
Is that today when we're practicing in the little groups?
Yeah.
Okay, so Mark has enabled things so that you should be able to just share your screen.
Okay.
When you're in the little group. So what you do is you have the slideshow open before you know, when you, maybe during the little break, you could just make sure it's open on your computer so that it's easy to find. And then when you're in your small group, you look at the toolbar, it's usually at the bottom of the screen, and it should say
Okay.
share screen. And when you click on share screen, you then get a little window that shows you any windows that are open on your device. And one of them, hopefully, should be the slideshow. And then you just double click on that and it'll open up and it'll be shared on the screen.
Brilliant. Thank you.
And don't worry, if it doesn't work today, you can play with it at your leisure another time. But I wanted you to have them just in case as a sort of option for experimenting. Yeah, thanks for asking the question. Okay. Anything else for now? Elsa, is your hand's not still up, is it? No, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, well, what I suggest we do then is have our stretch break. So it's sort of about 23 minutes past 10 UK time. So we're going to come back at 10:30, so in 7 minutes. And we'll be going into small groups then, which Mark has been working on. So we'll be invited into the groups then. And when you, I mean, I'll remind us of this after the break, but when you get into the groups, you can decide, okay, out of your group, who are the 2 people who are going to have a little practice run during that hour? And then we'll have a break. And then the other 2 will have a little practice run in the second hour. And what I'm going to be doing during that time is just dropping in on groups, just to be around as a support really, and to see if there's any sort of questions or anything coming up. I'm not going to be turning up to see if you're doing it right. That's not what I'm interested in. I just want you to have a chance to play, really, to explore, to share with others who are in the same boat, and see how you find these materials. And I'll be showing up really, as I say, just to sort of see how it's going, and if you've got a question, then hopefully I can answer it. Nadia, go ahead.
Hi, Ginny. Lovely to see you. It's been a while and it's lovely to be here today. I was just curious, could I incorporate some somatic practices into the meditation to help with nervous system regulation? I mean, the practices are only very tiny anyway, but just like as another option, really.
So what I suggest we do with that question, if you don't mind, during this practice session, I would say keep it basic, keep it to
Okay.
what's there. But let's bring that question back to later on when we're going to be sort of unpacking after lunch and seeing what are the options that we can do with these sessions. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. And Joe, can we pin your question as well? That's a great question. Can you remind us of it when we come back later on? Because I think that's a really good one about resources. Okay. All right, let's have our stretch now. That's really important. Come back in 5 minutes or 5 or 6 minutes. Okay, see you shortly.